Nobody told you there was a race. You entered it anyway, probably years ago, and you have been running it against people who do not know your name and never will. This is the invisible race, and the first honest thing to say about it is that almost everyone is running it, and almost no one agreed to the terms. Picture an ordinary morning. You are not yet fully awake, and you check your phone anyway. In the space of 90 seconds you learn that someone from your graduating class was promoted, that a cousin closed on a house, that a person with your exact job title posted a number that makes your own number feel suddenly, inexplicably smaller. Nothing about your actual life has changed in those 90 seconds. Your bank balance is the same. Your work is the same. And yet some part of you has already started running, adjusting pace, recalculating position. This video is about that reflex, where it comes from, and what two philosophers separated from you by roughly 2,000 years, and one recent study in a psychology journal, all seem to agree about. Start with the oldest and plainest description of the problem. In a letter to his friend Lucilius, the Roman writer Seneca described coming home from a crowded public spectacle, the kind of ordinary entertainment a Roman might attend without a second thought, and finding something in himself had shifted for the worse. I come home, he wrote, more greedy, more ambitious, more voluptuous, and even more cruel and inhuman, because I have been among human beings. He had not done anything himself. He had only stood near a crowd and watched it want things, loudly, together. That was enough to leave a residue. From that single experience he drew a general rule, and stated it as a question and a one-word answer. Do you ask me, he wrote, what you should regard as especially to be avoided? I say, crowds. Not because crowds are cruel, necessarily, though they can be. His reasoning was more specific. To consort with the crowd is harmful, he wrote. There is no person who does not make some vice attractive to us. Proximity does the damage before argument ever gets involved. You do not sit down and decide to want what the crowd wants. You absorb it without choosing to. But Seneca was not arguing for isolation, and this is the part that tends to get lost when people quote him. His actual instruction was narrower and harder. You must either imitate or loathe the world, he wrote, and then immediately qualified it. You should not copy the bad simply because they are many, nor should you hate the many because they are unlike you. Read that twice, because it is doing something specific. It is not telling you to withdraw from other people. It is telling you to that the thing is worth doing, or that your worth depends on matching them at it. Crowd size is not a moral argument. Crowd size is not even much of a factual argument. It is just crowd size. This is the exact mechanism behind the invisible race. You are not actually comparing your life against one other life, weighed carefully, feature for feature, circumstance for circumstance. You are comparing your position against an entire field of runners, most of whom you have never met, whose starting conditions you do not know, whose finish lines are not your finish line, and whose apparent lead may not even be real. Here is where the philosophy gets an unexpected assist from a fairly recent psychology paper. In 2010, in the journal Psychological Science, the researchers Christopher Boyce, Gordon Brown, and Simon Moore published a study asking a specific question. Does income predict life satisfaction, or does rank, a person's position relative to a comparison group, predict it instead? Their finding was direct. The ranked position of a person's income predicted, and even the average income of the surrounding group, had no effect. Two people earning the exact same salary could report very different satisfaction, depending only on where that salary placed them among the people they measured themselves against. There is a second finding in the same study worth sitting with. Individuals weighted upward comparisons more heavily than downward ones. Looking at someone ahead of you registers more strongly than looking at someone behind you. The race, in other words, is not symmetrical. It is built nor the ones falling back. Notice what this implies about a common piece of advice, the idea that the fix for status anxiety is simply to change your comparison group, to stop measuring yourself against people who are ahead and start measuring yourself against people who have less. That can genuinely help, temporarily. But it does not exit the race. It just moves you to a different stretch of track, where you are still running, still ranking, still vulnerable the moment someone new enters your field of view and happens to be further along than you are. The rank hypothesis does not describe a problem with a particular comparison group. It describes a problem with treating rank itself as the measure of a life. Put the ancient warning and the modern study together, and the invisible race stops sounding like a metaphor and starts sounding like a fairly literal description of a mechanism. A mind that evolved to track its position within a small, visible group is now processing an effectively unlimited comparison field, refreshed every time a screen lights up. There is a reason the reflex exists at all, and it is not stupidity. For most of human history, knowing you're standing inside a small, visible group carried real consequences. It told you where you stood in line for scarce resources, who might help you and who might not, how much risk you could safely take on. A mind that tracked relative position closely, in a group of a few dozen people whose full circumstances it could actually observe, was making a reasonable trade of attention for safety. What changed is not the reflex. What changed is the size and speed of the field it now runs on. Your ancestors compared themselves to some number of people they actually knew, whose full circumstances they could largely see, updated at the pace of a village. You compare yourself to a curated slice drawn from thousands of lives you will never fully know, updated continuously, every time a screen lights up. The instrument built for a small room is now running in a stadium, and it has not been recalibrated for the difference. So what does a person actually do with this, beyond feeling faintly worse about owning a phone? Marcus Aurelius, writing to no one but himself during a military campaign, arrived at something close to a working answer. In one avoids who does not look to see what his neighbor says or does or thinks, but only to what he does himself, that it may be just and pure. Then, borrowing an image from an earlier writer named Agathon, he makes it concrete. Look not round at the depraved morals of others, he adds, but run straight along the line without deviating from it. Notice what he does not say. He does not say stop caring about your own work, your own effort, your own standard. He says stop looking sideways while you are running. Runners is, by definition, not running as well as they could, because attention is a limited resource, and part of it is now spent on people whose pace you cannot control and whose lane was never yours. This is not a claim that comparison is always wrong, or always avoidable, or even always unhelpful. You are a social creature, and some baseline awareness of where you stand relative to others has genuine, practical uses. It can tell you when to ask for more. It can tell you when a situation is unfair. It can tell you when you have drifted further from a reasonable standard than you realized. The philosophy on offer here is not asking you to go blind to other people. It is asking you to notice the moment when checking has stopped serving any of those practical purposes and has become the thing itself, running for the sake of running, comparing for the sake of comparing, with no destination attached to it at all. One honest caveat belongs here. What is being described in this video is an ordinary, universal reflex, not a diagnosis, and philosophy is not a substitute for care from a qualified professional. If checking your position against other people has become a compulsion you cannot set down on your own, that is worth naming to someone equipped to help with it directly. For most people, most of the time, there is a smaller and more usable test, borrowed loosely from both Seneca and Marcus Aurelius. When you notice the comparison firing, when the number or the promotion or the house lands and something in you starts recalculating, ask what it would actually change if you knew the full picture. Not the feeling. The concrete information. Does knowing this person's rank change anything you are able to do today? Usually it does not. It only changes how you feel about a position you were never actually competing for in the first place, in a race nobody organized, with a finish line nobody can point to. What this looks like in practice is not a person who has stopped noticing other people entirely. It is closer to a runner who has simply stopped turning their head mid-stride. The information about the field is still there, available if it is genuinely needed. It has just stopped being the thing the runner is running toward. The line Marcus Aurelius described, the one you run without deviating, is not drawn by outrunning anyone. It is drawn in advance, by deciding what a good effort actually looks like before the field is even visible, so that when the crowd does come into view, on either side, ahead or behind, it changes almost nothing about where your attention goes next. No one announced this race. No one is standing at a finish line keeping the real score, because there is no real score, only a running estimate assembled from other people's highlight reels and your own worst mornings. The only line worth running along, in the end, is the one you drew yourself, deciding in advance what mattered before the crowd got a vote in the matter. If you have caught yourself running this particular race recently, the comments are open, and it is worth naming out loud what set it off this time. The next video turns to a different room in the same problem, the reflex that decides in advance what you are and are not allowed to want.